Welcome to another deep dive. Look, we all know the famous habanera aria from the opera. When you hear the name Carmen, you probably picture, soaring music, velvet curtains, a woman in a stunning red dress with a rose in her teeth, and this sweeping romantic stage play.
Right, the classic theatrical image.
Exactly. But today, we're asking you to take that image and just throw it completely out the window. We are stripping away all that theatrical glamour to look at the raw, gritty, original source material. That is the 1845 novella by Prosper Mérimée.
And what Mérimée actually wrote is much closer to a psychological thriller or even a true crime story than a romance. It is a suspenseful, incredibly dark narrative about bandits, smugglers, and this fatal obsession that drags a man straight into the abyss.
We're stepping entirely out of the opera house and straight into the scorching, unforgiving landscape of 19th century Andalusia. To really do this justice, the structure of this deep dive is going to mirror the text itself. We're going to take you through this as a narrative.
I think that's the best way to do it. We will explore the vivid, dangerous backgrounds of the era, the intense and deeply toxic character dynamics, and the downward spiral of events that inevitably leads to a very grim finale.
Let's set the scene. Imagine you are wandering the higher lands of the Quechena Plain in southern Spain. It is the autumn of 1830. The sun is absolutely blistering. You are parched, exhausted, and covered in dust.
Just completely miserable.
Oh, beyond miserable. This is where we meet our initial narrator. He is a French archaeologist out here in the middle of nowhere, guided by a local man named Antonio. He is looking for the ancient Roman battlefield of Munda. He has got nothing with him but a few shirts and a copy of Caesar's Commentaries.
Which won't help him much out there.
Not at all. He is cursing the brutal heat when his eye catches a patch of green sward and some reeds in the distance.
And that patch of green in a sun-baked Spanish plain is nothing short of a lifesaver. It signals a hidden spring. Our narrator follows the water into a narrow gorge between two steep cliffs, and the landscape suddenly opens up into this natural hidden amphitheater.
Like a secret haven.
It is a literal oasis. There is a pool of water lined with snow-white sand, completely shaded by massive evergreen oaks. It seems like the perfect, idyllic resting place. But the tension ramps up the second he arrives. As our narrator rides in, his horse neighs in relief, and another horse, completely invisible in the shadows, neighs back.
That's terrifying.
The narrator realizes instantly he has stumbled into someone else's hiding spot.
Roused from his sleep by the noise, a man stands up from the tall grass. He is an active, powerful-looking young fellow. His skin is tanned darker than his hair by the brutal sun, and his expression is fierce and sullen. But the detail that really makes our archaeologist's heart skip a beat is the weapon.
Yeah, you don't want to surprise a man holding one of those.
Right. In one hand, the stranger holds his horse's halter. In the other, he is tightly gripping a brass blunderbuss.
A blunderbuss is a serious piece of hardware for the 1830s. It is essentially an early shotgun with a flared muzzle designed to scatter heavy lead shot over a short distance. It is absolutely devastating at close range.
It clears a room.
Or a gorge in this case. It is also the undeniable universal tool of the highwayman. Our narrator has heard endless horror stories about Andalusian robbers slitting the throats of travelers, but he has never actually come face to face with one. He calculates that the best survival tactic here is utter, unflinching confidence.
Fake it till you make it.
Exactly. He doesn't panic. He casually nods to the man, dismounts, and walks straight to the spring to drink. The stranger watches him in dead silence, taking his measure. Then the stranger shifts his gaze to the guide, Antonio. Antonio immediately turns pale and freezes in sheer terror.
So what is the play here for a stranded academic facing a heavily armed highwayman? The narrator pretends not to notice Antonio's panic at all. He lies down on the grass, pulls out a cigar case, and casually asks the terrifying man with the gun if he has a light.
Such a bold move.
The man, still without saying a word, gets his flint and strikes a light for the cigar. Then the narrator offers him a premium Havana cigar. This seems like a tiny detail, but in the context of 19th century Spain, isn't this gesture doing a lot of heavy lifting?
It is doing all the heavy lifting. Giving and accepting a cigar in this specific time and culture establishes a profound, almost sacred bond. The text compares it explicitly to the ancient Eastern tradition of partaking in bread and salt. It acts as an unspoken contract of hospitality and mutual non-aggression.
It neutralizes the threat.
Precisely. By lighting that cigar and accepting the Havana, the tension subtly shifts. The stranger finally speaks, blowing out a puff of smoke and sighing about how long it has been since he last smoked. The narrator, being an academic, notices that the man's accent isn't local. He doesn't swallow his S sounds the way Andalusians do.
So he knows he's dealing with an outsider.
Right. They start talking about horses, and the stranger brags about his mount, claiming it can cover 30 leagues in a single day. But he quickly cuts himself off, looking embarrassed, realizing he might have revealed a little too much about why he needs a horse that can outrun the authorities.
To cement that unspoken contract, the narrator brings out lunch. He has Antonio unpack some excellent ham from his wallet. The stranger attacks this food. The description is visceral. He eats like a starving wolf. It becomes glaringly obvious the man has likely been fasting and hiding out for days.
The contrast is striking. While the stranger devours the food, Antonio eats almost nothing and refuses to speak. There is a suffocating mutual distrust between the local guide and the stranger.
After the meal, the narrator mentions they are heading to spend the night at a place called the Venta del Cuervo. The stranger says he is heading there too, and suggests they ride together. The narrator agrees, even as Antonio desperately makes secret, frantic hand gestures behind the stranger's back to decline.
We should probably describe what a venta is, because it is not a quaint countryside bed and breakfast. The Venta del Cuervo is described as the most wretched hole imaginable.
Paint us a picture.
Picture a single, massive, smoke-filled room with a fire burning on a flat stone right in the middle of the floor. There are no beds, just filthy mule rugs scattered along the walls for travelers to sleep on. When our trio arrives at this zero-star roadside motel, the old woman running the place sees the stranger and gasps, calling him Señor Don José.
That slip of the tongue changes everything.
It does. The stranger immediately shoots her a lethal look and makes a sharp gesture of authority that silences her instantly. At this point, the narrator knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is traveling with a notorious outlaw, but he is relying entirely on that bond of the shared cigar and the shared ham to keep a knife out of his back.
That night, the narrator cannot sleep. The inn is swarming with bugs. He finally gives up and sneaks outside to sleep on a wooden bench in the cool air. Just as he is dozing off, he sees a shadow moving quietly. It is Antonio, sneaking a horse out of the shed with his hooves carefully muffled in rags.
The ultimate betrayal is in motion.
The narrator grabs him, and Antonio finally whispers the terrifying truth. The man sleeping inside is José Navarro, the most feared, most noted bandit in all of Andalusia. There is a 200-ducat bounty on his head. Antonio is sneaking off to fetch a squad of cavalry lancers stationed nearby to come and capture her before dawn.
To put that bounty into perspective, 200 ducats was a staggering, life-changing amount of money for a peasant guide in 1830. It represents years of income. This creates a fascinating moral dilemma for our narrator.
Because he has to choose between the law and the cigar.
Exactly. Antonio is technically doing the right thing for an upstanding citizen. He is upholding the law and catching a dangerous, wanted murderer. But the narrator feels deeply bound by those unspoken laws of hospitality. They broke bread together, they smoked together. Can he simply stand by and let a man who ate his food be dragged off to the gallows?
The narrator wrestles with this, but ultimately makes his choice. He goes back inside the pitch-black inn and roughly shakes the sleeping bandit awake. Waking up a paranoid, wanted killer in the pitch dark sounds like a great way to get shot.
It is incredibly risky. Jose bounds to his feet with a fierce look, instantly lunging for his blunderbuss. The narrator urgently warns him that lancers are on the way. Jose realizes the guy had betrayed him, thanks the narrator, and swears he isn't as wicked as people think.
He saddles his horse and vanishes into the night, cementing a very strange, life-saving debt between a French scholar and an Andalusian killer.
It is a brilliant opening sequence because it establishes the harsh reality of the setting and introduces Don Jose not as a one-dimensional monster, but as a man who honors a debt. He has a code. But now, the narrative shifts locations and moves forward in time. We leave the dusty plains and travel to the ancient city of Cordova several months later.
The sensory details Mérimée provides here are absolutely crucial for setting the mood for the introduction of our title character. The atmosphere in Cordova is incredibly thick and moody.
Set the scene for us in Cordova.
The narrator is standing on the quay along the right bank of the Guadalquivir River at twilight. You can smell the heavy, pungent odor of the tan yards where leather is cured. The sun sets, and the Angelus bell rings from the massive cathedral. The moment that bell stops, a huge group of women from the town gather by the river, disrobe in the dark, and bathe in the water.
It is this poetic, chaotic scene of splashing and laughing in the dark blue water, shrouded in twilight. Against this backdrop of shadows and river water, The narrator is leaning over the parapet, smoking a cigar. A woman comes up the steps from the river and sits down near him.
And she has this distinct scent about her.
She has a great bunch of jasmine in her hair, and jasmine at night exhales a profoundly intoxicating perfume. This is our introduction to Carmen. It is vital to understand that she is not described as a traditional, flawless beauty. Her allure is striking, unconventional, and inherently dangerous.
Let's break down exactly how she is described. She has smooth skin, but it is the color of copper. Her lips are beautifully shaped, showing teeth as white as peeled almonds, but her hair is slightly coarse, black with blue lights like a raven's wing. It is her eyes that truly stand out.
The eyes are always the focal point with her.
They are large, set obliquely in her head, and the narrator notes they have an expression of mingled sensuality and fierceness. He explicitly compares her gaze to a wolf lying in wait for a sparrow.
That wolf and sparrow analogy tells you everything you need to know about how Carmen operates in the world. She is the predator, everyone else is prey. She notices the narrator's cigar and casually mentions she likes smoking. He offers her one, and they smoke together in the dark.
She realizes quickly by his accent that he is a foreigner. He realizes by her bold manner, her copper skin, and her dialect that she is a gitana, a Romani gypsy. She invites him back to her place to tell his fortune, his baji.
Because our narrator is an academic infinitely curious about occult sciences and local superstitions, he agrees to follow this mysterious woman through the winding, empty streets of Cordova.
Her house is incredibly sparse. It's just a small table, 2 stools, a chest, and some oranges and onions. She pulls out a highly used pack of tarot cards, a piece of lodestone, and a dried chameleon, and begins these intricate magic ceremonies.
But right in the middle of this intimate, strange moment, the door is violently kicked open.
A man shrouded to the eyes in a brown cloak storms into the room. He is absolutely furious. He starts yelling at Carmen, and she yells back in a language the narrator doesn't understand, the Romani language.
The tension in this small room spikes instantly. The narrator realizes the man is repeatedly using the word peyo, which means an outsider, a non-gypsy. The narrator readies himself to smash a wooden stool over the cloaked man's head just to survive.
But then the man drops his cloak, and the narrator realizes with creaking horror that it is his old acquaintance, the bandit Don José, the very man he saved from the authorities months ago.
Jose is just as shocked to see the scholar. But the truly chilling part of the scene is Carmen's reaction. She does not care that they know each other. She keeps arguing with Jose and Romani, getting more and more heated. Her eyes grow bloodshot.
And she makes this gesture that is just pure ice.
She keeps making this incredibly specific, violent gesture, drawing her little hand backward and forward under her chin. She is silently, vehemently demanding that Jose slit the scholar's throat and take his money.
It is a stark, terrifying display of her ruthlessness. To her, the scholar is just a peyo with a heavy coin purse. But Jose, remembering the debt of the Havana cigar and the warning at the Venta del Cuervo, refuses. He physically pushes her away.
Carmen, absolutely disgusted by his refusal to kill, just sits down in the corner, peels an orange, and completely ignores them both. Jose grabs the narrator by the arm, marches him out into the dark street, points him toward the bridge, and tells him to go straight home and never look back.
It is only later, when the narrator is undressing in his inn, that he realizes his incredibly valuable gold repeater watch is missing. Carmen stole it right off him during the fortune-telling distraction.
She never misses an opportunity. This brings us to the core framing device of the narrative. Fast forward several more months, the scholar is back in Cordova, and he finds out that the notorious bandit Don Jose Navarro has finally been captured. He is locked in a prison cell, and in 2 days he is going to be executed by the garrote.
The scholar visits him in his cell, brings him some cigars, and promises to deliver a silver medal to Jose's mother up north. Touched by this final act of humanity, Don Jose sits back in his dark cell and finally tells the scholar his entire story. He tells him how a proud soldier ended up a condemned murderer waiting for the garrote.
We need to pause and explain what the garrote actually is, because it highlights the grim reality of Jose's fate. It was not a simple hanging. The garrote was a brutal execution device used in Spain. The condemned is strapped to a wooden chair with an iron collar placed around their neck.
The executioner turns a massive screw or lever attached to the collar, slowly crushing the windpipe and snapping the neck. It is a terrifying, ignoble way to die.
To understand how Jose ended up facing this, we have to look at his backstory. Jose explains that he is Basque, from the valley of Baztan in Navarre. This geographical detail is the absolute key to his entire psychological makeup.
How does being Basque differentiate him from the people around him in Andalusia?
The Basque people have a distinct ancient culture, completely separate from the rest of Spain, including their own language. They are incredibly proud of their heritage. José is an hidalgo, meaning he comes from noble, old Christian stock. He possesses a rigid, deeply ingrained sense of honor, duty, and stoicism.
He was actually studying for the church originally, wasn't he?
He was, but he got into a fight over a game of tennis. He used a heavy stick, won the fight a little too brutally by crushing a man's skull, and had to flee his hometown to avoid the law.
Because he is on the run, he enlists in a cavalry regiment and ends up stationed all the way down south in Seville. Because of his strict Basque work ethic, he quickly rises to the rank of corporal. He doesn't drink, he doesn't mess around, and he is actually rather terrified of the flirtatious, loud, vibrant women of Andalusia.
He is entirely out of his element.
He just sits on his bench, making a chain out of brass wire to hold his priming pin, minding his own business. But one day, he is put on guard duty outside the massive Seville tobacco factory.
The Real Fábrica de Tabacos in Seville was a monumental institution. It employed 400 to 500 women who rolled cigars by hand. The socioeconomic reality of these women was unique. They were independent wage earners in a society where women rarely had that kind of financial freedom.
They were notoriously rowdy, tough, and fiercely protective of their own. When they return from their dinner break, it is a daily spectacle. Hundreds of young men gather at the gates just to watch them walk by and shout compliments.
José ignores all of it, keeping his eyes glued to his wire chain, until he hears the crowd murmur, "Here comes the gitanella! Here comes the gypsy girl!"
He looks up, and there is Carmen. The text gives us this vivid image of her walking through the crowd. She's wearing a very short skirt, white silk stockings with holes in them, and dainty red Morocco shoes tied with flame-colored ribbons. Her mantilla is thrown back to show off her shoulders.
She has a bunch of acacia blossoms tucked into her chemise and another blossom resting in the corner of her mouth. She walks, as José describes it, swaying her hips like a thoroughbred filly. Every man is shouting at her, and she has a bold, mocking, sharp answer for every single one.
José tries to ignore her, which is precisely what draws her to him. Carmen is described as acting like a cat. She ignores the people desperately calling her and goes straight to the one person who isn't paying her any attention.
She stops right in front of José and starts mocking him for diligently making his wire chain. She asks if he's making lace. The crowd bursts out laughing. José, the stoic Basque soldier, blushes deeply and cannot find a single word to say in response.
Seeing him so incredibly flustered, Carmen takes the acacia blossom out of her mouth, and with her thumb, she flips it right at him. It hits him dead center between the eyes. José says he felt it like a bullet.
A bullet is the perfect metaphor for what she just did to him.
He freezes, completely paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it. Carmen laughs and walks into the factory. But after the crowd disperses, José does something that seals his fate forever. Without anyone seeing, he picks that flower up off the dusty ground and carefully hides it inside his uniform jacket.
He says it himself. That was his first fatal mistake. It is the exact moment the hook is set. But the story accelerates wildly just a few hours later. A terrified porter rushes into the guardroom, screaming that there is a murder happening inside the cigar rolling room.
The sergeant orders José to take 2 men and restore order. When José enters the massive hall, it is absolute bedlam. 300 women are screaming, fighting, and throwing things. In the center of the room, a woman is lying on her back, streaming with blood.
Her face has been slashed wide open with a knife. Someone has carved an X, a St. Andrew's cross, deeply into her cheeks. Standing opposite the bleeding woman, held back by 5 or 6 others, is Carmen.
She isn't screaming. She is completely silent, clenching her teeth and rolling her eyes like a cornered animal. José finds out that the fight started over a petty argument about money and a broom. The injured woman insulted Carmen's gypsy heritage.
Carmen responded by calmly promising to paint a draft board on her cheeks, and then she delivered on that promise with the heavy, sharp knife she used to cut the ends off cigars. The crime is undeniable and grotesque.
José arrests Carmen and marches her out. She goes quietly at first, pulling her mantilla over her head so only one of those large dark eyes is visible. The sergeant orders José to march her across town to the prison. It is during this long walk through the winding, narrow streets of Seville that Carmen executes a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
Carmen is cornered, and she knows she cannot outmuscle a heavily armed cavalry corporal. She uses her sharpest weapon, her wits. She drops her mantilla to show him her face. She tries begging, using a coaxing, sensual voice, calling him my officer.
She even offers him a piece of a magic lodestone that she claims will make any woman fall in love with him. Jose, trying desperately to maintain his military discipline, tells her to stop talking nonsense and keep walking.
But then Carmen notices a detail that gives her the ultimate leverage. She notices his accent. She realizes he is Basque. Gypsies, traveling constantly across borders and surviving by their wits, often pick up multiple languages. Carmen knows just enough Basque to be dangerous.
She switches tactics immediately.
She suddenly switches languages and calls him comrade of my heart. She spins this entirely fabricated, tragic backstory. She claims she isn't a gypsy at all. She says she was kidnapped by gypsies from Navarre near his hometown. She talks about how much she misses the white mountains of their homeland and how the women in the factory were bullying her because she didn't belong in this land of rogues.
We have to consider why this specific manipulation shatters his defenses. Jose is profoundly homesick. He is surrounded by Andalusians whose culture he doesn't understand and secretly despises. Hearing his native tongue from this captivating, beautiful woman completely short-circuits his brain.
He says he felt like a drunken man. He forgets his orders. He forgets his sacred duty. Carmen whispers that if he just accidentally gives her a push and falls over, his two guards won't be able to catch her.
And he actually does it. His tragic flaw, his Basque pride and his desperate homesickness overrides all his military conditioning. They enter a narrow lane. Carmen turns, punches him lightly in the chest, and Jose purposely throws himself backward onto the cobblestones.
Carmen literally vaults over him and runs away with incredible speed. Jose scrambles up and purposefully blocks his own men with his lance to give her time to escape the alleyway.
The authorities, of course, aren't entirely stupid. It looks incredibly suspicious that a massive, trained cavalry corporal was knocked down by a slight girl in a dress. Jose is punished severely.
He is stripped of his corporal stripes and sentenced to a month in a grim military prison. He loses the career and respect he worked so hard to achieve. He is sitting in a dark cell, totally ruined. Yet he admits he couldn't stop thinking about her. He kept pulling out that dried acacia flower just to smell it in the dark.
While he is sitting in that prison, we get a key insight into Carmen's character. She operates on a very specific, almost transactional code of honor. One day, the jailer brings Jose a loaf of bread, an alcala roll, claiming it is from his cousin. Jose has no cousin in Seville.
When he cuts the bread open, his knife hits something hard. Baked inside the dough is a small English file capable of cutting through the iron window bars and a gold coin worth 2 piastres. It is a complete, well-thought-out escape kit.
Carmen remembered him, and she paid her debt for his help.
Exactly. But here we see the last lingering shreds of Jose's strict military honor. He refuses to use the file. To him, desertion is a heinous crime that would forever stain his family's name. He chooses to serve out his sentence and take his punishment. But he keeps the file as a memento, and he keeps the gold coin.
When he is finally released, his punishment isn't over. He's been demoted to a lowly private. To add insult to injury, he is assigned to stand as a sentry outside his colonel's house during a massive party. He's standing there with his musket, deeply humiliated, watching the rich young officers arrive.
Then a carriage pulls up. Out steps Carmen. She is dressed to the nines, gold ribbons, a spangled gown, carrying a tambourine. She has been hired to dance for the rich officers. She recognizes him immediately standing in the shadows.
She mocks him, telling him he keeps guard like a raw recruit, and goes inside. For an agonizing hour, Jose has to stand outside in the dark, listening to the castanets, the music, and the laughter of the officers flirting with the woman he ruined his life for.
He says he was tempted to rush in and drive his sword through every man in the courtyard. But when she leaves the party, she drops a hint. She tells him to meet her at Lilis Pastia's, a fried fish shop run by a fellow gypsy where she is staying.
The moment Jose is off duty, he cleans himself up and races over there. Carmen immediately drops her work for the day. What follows is a manic whirlwind day that showcases Carmen's complete disregard for money, the future, or consequence.
Jose tries to give her the gold coin back, saying he didn't use it to escape. She just laughs, takes the coin, and then takes every last copper Jose has in his pockets, and they go on a massive, chaotic shopping spree.
She buys oranges, sausages, wine, and then storms into a confectioner's shop and buys bags of the most expensive sweets and preserved fruits. They carry all of this to an old house, lock the door, and have a wild, decadent feast.
It is a scene of pure, childish excess. She stuffs sugar plums into a water jar to make sherbet. She smashes candied egg yolks against the wall, laughing that it will keep the flies away. When Jose says he wants to see her dance, but they don't have castanets, she grabs the only earthenware plate in the room, smashes it into pieces, and uses the broken shards to dance the romales for him.
She throws her arms around his neck and declares, "I pay my debts. You are my Rome. I am your Romy." She essentially claims him as her husband for the day.
Jose is in absolute heaven. He ignores the military tattoo beating in the distance, calling him back to barracks. He decides to stay and endure whatever punishment comes his way. But the very next morning, the illusion completely shatters.
Carmen's mood swings violently. She coldly tells him that she has paid her debt. She warns him that the dog and the wolf cannot agree for long. She tells him to go away and never think of her again, warning him that dealing with the devil doesn't end well.
This sudden, brutal rejection drives Jose to the brink of madness. He wanders the city for days, looking for her everywhere. Finally, he tracks her down to an old woman's house. But he isn't the only one there. Carmen walks in, followed by a young man, the lieutenant of Jose's own regiment.
The situation escalates with terrifying speed. Carmen immediately tells Jose and Basque to run away through the window. The lieutenant, angry and humiliated to see a private soldier in his mistress's room, grabs Jose by the collar and shakes him violently.
Jose is paralyzed with rage. The officer draws his sword and cuts Jose across the forehead. The sight of his own blood snaps the last thread of Jose's discipline. He draws his own sword. The old woman tries to pull them apart, but Jose violently shoves her down.
The lieutenant lunges, and Jose turns his sword point upward. The officer runs right onto the blade and dies on the floor. In a fraction of a second, Jose goes from a disgraced soldier to a murderer of a superior officer.
The punishment for this is a firing squad, without question. Carmen immediately takes control of the chaos. She puts out the lamp, orders the old woman to flee, and drags Jose out into the alley. She bandages his bleeding head, brings him a striped cloak to hide his bloody uniform, and disguises him as a Valencian peasant.
They hide out in a gypsy safe house. As Jose recovers from his head wound, Carmen lays out the cold, hard reality of his new life. She tells him that since he can't be a soldier anymore, and he is far too stupid to be a pickpocket, his only option is to head to the coast and become a smuggler.
She paints this highly romanticized picture of riding through the mountains, camping in the open air, and sleeping in a little tent with her. Jose, whose moral compass has been completely shattered, grasps at this fantasy.
He rationalizes that if they are outlaws together, isolated in the mountains, she won't have the opportunity to cheat on him with rich officers. He believes the hardship of the outlaw life will bind her to him permanently. So he leaves Seville, connects with a smuggling ring led by a man named El Dancaire, and embraces the grim life of a bandit.
At first, it seems to work. The smuggling runs are successful, Jose has money, and Carmen acts as the gang's spy, finding out which roads are safe and which travelers are carrying gold. She is affectionate with Jose, and he thinks he has finally won her.
But then El Dancaire drops an absolute bombshell on him. He mentions casually that Carmen just pulled off a brilliant trick. She managed to orchestrate a prison break for her husband.
Jose is utterly devastated to learn that Carmen is already married. And her husband isn't just anybody. His name is Garcia el Tuerto, which translates to Garcia the One-Eyed.
How does Mérimée describe this new rival?
Garcia is a nightmare. He is a hardened galley convict, described as the ugliest, blackest-hearted, most thorough-paced ruffian in all of gypsydom. When Carmen arrives at the smuggler's camp with this terrifying man, she acts like Jose doesn't even exist.
She plays the dutiful wife, though she shoots secret, mocking glances at Jose when Garcia isn't looking. Jose is disgusted, and the brutal reality of his new life comes crashing down during their very next smuggling run.
They are ambushed by a dozen soldiers. The gang has to abandon their mules and scramble up the rocky, steep cliffs. During the chaotic retreat, one of their comrades, a young guy named El Remendado, takes a musket ball to the lower back and collapses.
Jose, still holding on to some shred of his former humanity, drops his heavy pack of stolen goods and tries to physically carry the wounded man. This is where we see the stark contrast between Jose's lingering honor and Garcia's absolute depravity.
Garcia runs up and screams at Jose to drop the bleeding man and save the stolen cotton stockings instead. When Jose refuses and struggles to carry the boy, Garcia raises his blunderbuss, points it point blank at his own wounded comrade's face, and pulls the trigger.
He blows El Remendado's face completely apart so the authorities won't be able to recognize the body and track the rest of the gang.
Yeah.
It is an act of breathtaking, cold-blooded brutality. How does Jose justify staying with these monsters?
He doesn't really. He is just trapped by his obsession. That night, hiding in a thicket, starving and exhausted, Jose lies awake staring at the stars, haunted by the murdered boy. Meanwhile, Garcia pulls out a deck of cards and casually starts playing a game by the firelight, completely unbothered by what he just did.
And Carmen. She creeps over to Jose in the dark and kisses him, proving she thrives in this chaos. The breaking point between Jose and Garcia is inevitable, and Carmen orchestrates it flawlessly.
She goes to Gibraltar on a spying mission. She seduces a wealthy English officer, a milord, and sets up an ambush. The gang is waiting in the woods for the Englishman's carriage to pass. But Jose's jealousy has reached an absolute boiling point.
While they're waiting in the trees, Jose deliberately picks a fight with Garcia over a game of cards. He accuses Garcia of cheating and throws the cards directly in his face. Garcia reaches for his gun, but Jose pins it with his foot and challenges him to a knife fight.
Eldencare tries to stop them, but realizes it is hopeless and steps back. What follows is an incredibly tense, highly technical description of a 19th century knife duel. Mérimée breaks down the martial arts of the era beautifully.
He describes the distinct fighting styles based on their heritage.
Garcia fights using the Andalusian guard. He crouches down low like a cat ready to spring. He holds his left arm out with his hat wrapped around it to act as a shield, and holds his knife in his right hand, pointing forward, ready to slash.
Jose, however, uses the Navarrese guard. He stands perfectly straight and tall. He raises his left arm high in the air as a distraction, keeping his left leg forward, and hides his knife straight along his right thigh, so his opponent cannot even see the blade.
Garcia lunges forward like an arrow, but Jose pivots on his left foot, stepping completely off the center line. Garcia strikes empty air. As Garcia stumbles past his guard, Jose drives his knife up under Garcia's chin with such devastating force that the blade goes in deep and snaps off in the bone.
Garcia falls dead instantly. Jose has murdered a second man for Carmen. When the carriage arrives the next day, they rob the Englishman, and Jose casually tells Carmen she is a widow.
Her response is chilling. She doesn't mourn, but she doesn't celebrate either. She simply tells Jose that Garcia's time had come and that Jose's time will come too. She firmly believes in fate, reading the future in coffee grounds. She accepts that they are doomed to end their lives together.
For a few months, they actually run the smuggling gang together. But the dynamic shifts dramatically. Jose wants to control her, and Carmen absolutely refuses to be commanded. She tells him outright, "Now that you're my husband for good, I do not care for you as much as when you were just my lover. I will not be ordered about. I choose to be free."
Her affection cools completely. This leads to the final, fatal triangle. The gang is nearly wiped out in a massive shootout with soldiers. Jose is severely wounded with a bullet in his body. Carmen hides him in Granada and nurses him back to health for 6 weeks with incredible dedication.
But while she's in Granada, she starts attending the bullfights. She sets her sights on a new target, a wealthy, famous, brave bullfighter, a picador, named Lucas. Jose finds out she's been seen with Lucas. He begs her to drop the criminal life.
He begs her to run away with him to America and start over, planting cabbages and living quietly. Carmen literally laughs in his face. She says they weren't born to plant cabbages. They were born to prey on others.
The ultimate confrontation happens in Cordova. Jose, driven half mad with paranoid jealousy, buys a ticket to the bullfight. He sits in the stands and watches as Lucas the picador performs a brilliant, highly dangerous maneuver, snatches a decorative ribbon, a cockade, off the raging bull, and rides over to the barrier to hand it to Carmen.
Carmen proudly pins it in her hair. It is a massive public declaration of her new lover in front of thousands of people. Jose's blood boils. A moment later, the bull crushes Lucas and his horse against the wall.
While the crowd is in an uproar, Jose tracks Carmen down. That night, he forces her onto his horse and rides out of the city into the dark countryside. They ride in utter, suffocating silence until dawn breaks. They stop at a lonely country inn near an isolated hermitage.
This is the beginning of the end. Jose gives her one final ultimatum. He says he will forgive everything. He will forget Lucas. He will even continue being a bandit and a murderer if she wants. He just asks her to swear she will love him and go with him.
Carmen refuses. She says she is perfectly fine where she is. Jose is so desperate, he walks away to the nearby hermitage to find a priest. He pays the hermit a silver coin to say a mass for a soul that is about to meet its maker.
When he walks back to the inn, he admits he half hopes Carmen has stolen his horse and fled. He wants her to escape to save him from what he knows he's going to do, but she is still there. She refuses to run from him because she refuses to show fear.
While he was gone, she engaged in a dark, fatalistic ritual. She unfastened the heavy lead weights from the hem of her dress, melted the lead over the fire, and poured it into a bowl of water to read her fortune in the hardened metal shapes.
A hare had run across their path earlier, which she saw as a terrible omen. She has accepted that she is going to die today. Jose puts her on the horse, and they ride to a completely isolated, silent gorge. He stops the horse.
Carmen leaps down, throws her mantilla on the dusty ground, puts her hand on her hip, and stares him dead in the eye. She says, "You mean to kill me. It is fate, but you will never make me give in."
The dialogue here is the philosophical core of the entire novella. Jose drops to his knees, he cries, he begs her to let him save her, he promises her the world, and Carmen delivers her final, devastating truth.
She says she does not love him anymore. She admits she loved the bullfighter, but now she loves nothing. She says, "You have the right to kill your Romy, but Carmen will always be free. A collie she was born, and a collie she will die."
As a final act of absolute defiance, she pulls the ring Jose gave her off her finger and throws it deep into the brushwood. The rejection is total. Jose's mind shatters. He draws Garcia's broken knife, the very weapon he used to kill her husband.
He stabs her twice. She falls without making a single sound. Her great dark eyes stare up at him until they finally close forever. He sits beside her body for an hour in total silence.
Remembering she once said she wanted to be buried in the woods, he digs a grave with his knife. He searches the brushwood, finds the ring, and buries it with her, along with a small wooden cross. Then he rides his horse to the nearest guardhouse, walks in, and surrenders to the authorities. His story is over.
It is a devastating, brutal ending. But Mérimée does something highly unusual after this violent climax. He doesn't just end the book. He adds an entire final chapter that acts as an ethnographic essay, detailing the customs, language, and superstitions of the Romani people in Spain.
At first glance, this might feel like dry history tacked onto a thriller, but it is actually the key to unlocking everything we just talked about. Mérimée uses this chapter to deeply contextualize the tragedy we just witnessed.
By detailing the Romani culture, their extreme physical hardiness, their survival tactics in a hostile society, and their strict loyalty only to their own kind, he proves that Carmen wasn't acting out of sheer arbitrary malice.
She was operating under a completely different moral framework than Jose. The text details how gypsies survived on the fringes by selling toad's claws and powdered lodestones and running elaborate scams like sewing gold coins into scarves in graveyards at midnight to trick gullible locals.
It shows a culture surviving by preying on the credulity of outsiders. To Carmen, Jose was always a Palic, an outsider. He was a tool to be used for survival or amusement, but he could never be a master she would obey.
It is the ultimate tragedy of incompatible worldviews. You have an immovable object in Don José, a man driven by rigid, obsessive, unyielding bass honor, whose sense of ownership over his honor transfers to ownership over Carmen.
And he collides with an unstoppable force in Carmen, a woman who embodies wild, uncompromising, absolute freedom. Neither of them could change their nature, which meant their destruction was guaranteed from the moment she threw that acacia flower outside the tobacco factory.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the gritty reality of Carmen, we want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to mull over. The text explicitly tells us that Carmen constantly practiced magic. She read the future in cards and coffee grounds and in melted lead. Her magic was absolutely real to her.
Which raises an incredibly haunting question. If she truly believed she could see the future, did she know from the very first day outside the tobacco factory that this stoic Basque soldier was the man who would eventually murder her?
And if she did know, was her final refusal to run away not just a stubborn death wish, but the ultimate fearless assertion of her own free will?
Did she actively choose her own violent death rather than live a single day as someone else's property? Think about that next time you hear the soaring opera music playing. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and we will see you in the next one.